Hey Bookaholics, so welcome back to another video. Today I am bringing you a list of my favourite standalones of 2024. I am only going to be doing a top 10. I'm not going to go through every single standalone that I read. So here are my favourites, my top 10 standalones. Getting in, I have The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I love reading Toni Morrison, and this was no exception. In this story, we are following a young black girl who has decided that she wants to be beautiful, and her standard of beauty is to have blue eyes. And it kind of goes from there. There's so much commentary on beauty standards, on the racism that comes with industries, to do with fashion, to do with propagating what beauty looks like, and institutionalized racism as a whole. So loads to comment there. Gorgeous story. Had an amazing time. Would highly recommend checking out some Toni Morrison if you have not. And since this one is a bit more speculative, I thought that this would potentially be one that would be worth bringing to the attention of my, I imagine, predominantly SFF reading audience. One that I read very recently in December but I absolutely loved is The Witch and the Tsar by Olesya Selnikova Gilmore, and this one is the story of Baba Yaga, who lives in the forest. She is basically deemed a witch, but people still come to her when they need her medicinal remedies. So when her friend, the Tsar's wife, is ill, she comes to her aid. I really loved the emphasis on friendship in here and the relationship between the two women. I just think that it was a really apt story for the time in which I read it. The mood was right, the vibe was right, the writing was right, the story was good, characters were awesome. I loved it. Another one that I read in December and had a great time with is A Midwinter's Tale by Lily Hayward. This one is folkloric, whimsical fantasy meets Hallmark movie. You have this woman who has this really career-driven life and she's going to get like the job of a lifetime, but she goes back to her godfather's house after he has had a stroke, and then she meets a guy there and she sees what she really wants out of life, and it's that type of story. It's a Hallmark movie story and it's set over Christmas, but I loved it anyway, and it was exactly what I needed. And it was just, I loved the whimsy and the beauty that came with talking about this place in England, this island, but at the same time having this romance, and at the same time having this, fight mega corporationsness to it as well. So I loved it overall. One that is not cute and whimsical, but I loved anyway, is The Death I Gave Him by M.X. Liu. This is one that is a Hamlet retelling. I have a thing for Hamlet retellings for some reason, so it's no surprise that that's on here, but I found this story to be such an interesting take on it. It's a sci-fi retelling. It's about taking over this major corporation and defying death instead of just about taking over a kingdom. And the way that it was done so fascinatingly, and it's how kind of everyone is in the wrong in this, apart from Orfeo. And I had a great time with it. One that when I first read it this year, because I've read it twice in 1 year, when I first read it, I don't think it would have made it onto this list. The second reread though, now it's 5 stars, so it's gone from a 4-star to a 5-star upon reread, even though I read it twice in 1 year. And that is One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. This is one that is about two rival mobsters, magic mobsters, families, and we have them waging their final throwdown against each other, and in the midst we have broken hearts. It's a Romeo and Juliet retelling, but with a slight hint of Russian folklore in there. We have one of them called Koschei the Deathless and the other called Baba Yaga, and I loved it. The first time I read it, I was like, okay, like there are certain things with the writing that really show up in the audiobook and it's really irritating, but upon reread I didn't care, and I spent so long thinking about it, and I was like, do you know what? I'm going to listen to it again. And I did, and I had a great time. So, speaks volumes, really. Coming in at number 5, I have To You Shall All Flesh Come by Lumen Reese. This is a horror fantasy in which we are following a group of guys who, as a side hustle, take vampires and harvest their organs, and then they release them back into the wild. They are affixed with this type of pacemaker that's called a pace taker, which is basically a toothpick that is aimed at their heart, and should they consume too much human blood, enough that would kill someone, death by toothpick. Then we are following them as they garner the attention of like the secret servicey kind of agency, and then get roped in far beyond what they imagined they could be. I had a great time with this. It was such a fun to be reading because it was one that I think it tackled its topics really well. I think it had really fun characters to be doing it with, but it had also this still really dark undertone to it, and it was just really well balanced. Had a great time with it. Would highly recommend. For number 4, I have one that is dark fantasy fairy tale, and that is Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reid. I read the first book that Ava Reid put out, which was Wolf and the Woodsman, and that one was fun. I had a great time with it, and I liked the writing style, but like it wasn't the most innovative thing. And then I only went and read this one thinking, oh, it'll be something similar. Not similar. Much darker. Much darker. Much more topical, much more theme heavy. Had a great time with this. It's about a girl who lives with her oppressive father in this world that is changing because of industrialization. Her father then keeps her and her sisters under this really tight leash, essentially, and they aren't allowed to leave, and he tells them all these lies so that they don't feel compelled to leave. And it's about her finding her feet in the world and then addressing some of her trauma. Dark story, but amazing story. In third place, I have The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher. I have read 3 T. Kingfishers this year, but this was my favorite. I loved this. It's so creepy, so atmospheric, but it's also so funny. And I love the protagonists in this. I love Tara and I love Simon. Tara is a divorcee who is moving back to her hometown, but instead of living with her overbearing mother, she lives in her uncle's museum, Curiosities Museum. And then a hole in the wall appears and it leads to somewhere it shouldn't lead to. Enter the horror part. Simon, who is her friend who kind of helps her figure out what is going on with this corridor. It's just so much fun. It's so funny. I had a great time. I need to read more by T. Kingfisher. My second favourite was an amazing book. I love this so much. It's a new favourite of all time, and that is The Book Eaters by Suyi Dean. And this one is a different take on vampirism, in which we're following a mother who comes from this group of people that are known as book eaters, and they have to consume books for nourishment. However, every now and then amongst the book eaters, a mind eater will be born, who is someone who instead of eating books has to eat people's minds. They are normally then sent to this other group that know how to handle them, but not wanting to have her child taken away from her and possibly hurt, she runs away with him. However, now she is faced with the conundrum of whether she keeps killing people to feed to her son, like she has been doing, turn him over to her family, or watch him starve. It's a story of motherhood, it's a story of vampirism, it's a story of morality, ethics, information, knowledge, life, so many things. Loved this book so much. Can't wait to read more by this author. And my number 1 standalone of 2024 was A Sword of Bronze and Ashes by Anna Smith Spark, thus solidifying Anna Smith Spark as one of my favourite authors. This is the second year in a row that I have had an Anna Smith Spark book be my top book. In this one, we are following Kanda, who is a mother, but she has passed. So now she lives on this farm with her husband and her children. However, yes, she has a past, and that past is dark, and we get the alternate timelines of her in her past and her now, and how she tackles the life that she is leading and the consequences, but also just tackling having to be a mother while having been a human being before, and the idea of how much of a perfect mother you are supposed to be. It's something that Anna Smith Spark tackles really well in her other book, which is A Woman of the Sword, which was my favourite standalone last year, and I love reading the way that she writes motherhood into her stories. And there you have it. Those are my top 10 standalones of 2024. Let me know if you've read any of these and your thoughts on them, or if I have convinced you to try out any of these. Also, let me know what was your best standalone of 2024. But that is all for me for today, so thank you ever so much for watching, and I will hopefully catch you in another one soon. Bye!